You're camping somewhere remote. The fire's dying down, and just as you're drifting off, it starts. A long, rising note that seems to come from everywhere at once. Then, another voice joins it, slightly off pitch. Then a third. Within seconds, the whole valley sounds alive. Your first instinct is probably the same as everyone else's. Wolves howl at the moon. It's one of those facts that feels so obvious nobody bothers to question it. Except it isn't true. Wolves howl at night constantly, moon or no moon, clear sky or overcast. So if the moon has nothing to do with it, what's actually happening out there in the dark? The answer starts with something surprisingly mundane: distance. Sound travels differently at night than during the day. As the ground cools after sunset, the air near the surface becomes colder than the air above it. A temperature inversion. That inversion bends sound waves back down towards the earth instead of letting them scatter upward and dissipate. In practice, this means a howl that might carry a mile or two during the day can travel 6 miles or more at night. Wolves aren't howling at the moon. They're taking advantage of physics that happens to align with darkness. But timing is only half the story. The bigger question is why wolves are shouting into the void in the first place. And that's where things get more interesting than a simple physics lesson. Wolves are pack animals, and their territories can span hundreds of square miles. In terrain like that, you can't just walk over and check on your packmates. A howl functions as a long-range check-in system. It says, I'm here, I'm part of this group, and here's roughly where I am. Researchers who've studied wolf vocalizations have found that howls carry enough individual variation, pitch, rhythm, duration, that wolves can recognize specific pack members by voice alone. The way you'd recognize a friend's voice on the phone without them saying who's calling, that recognition matters because a howl isn't just contact. It's often a coordination tool. When a hunting pack splits up to cover more ground, or when pups are left behind at a den site while adults range out, howling keeps the group stitched together across distances where sight and scent are useless. A pup separated from its pack can howl and, in theory, be located by an adult moving toward the sound. It's less like a war cry and more like a check-in call nobody wants to skip. Then there's the territorial function, which is where howling starts to sound less like communication between friends and more like a warning to strangers. Wolf packs are fiercely territorial, and encounters between rival packs can be lethal. Territorial conflict is one of the leading causes of death for wild wolves in some populations. A howl broadcasts a pack's location and, implicitly, its size and presence to any neighboring pack within earshot. It's a way of saying this ground is occupied without anyone having to physically confront a rival group and risk a fight neither pack really wants. This is where the choral, layered quality of a wolf howl, the reason it can sound like 10 wolves when there are really only 4, starts to make sense. Researchers have noted that wolves seem to actively avoid howling in unison at the exact same pitch. Instead, they stagger and vary their notes, a phenomenon sometimes called the beau geste effect, named after a novel about a small group of soldiers making themselves sound like a much larger force by moving between positions and firing rapidly. A few wolves harmonizing in a ragged overlapping chorus can sound to a listening rival pack like a much bigger group than it actually is. It's not a campfire sing-along. It's a bluff, dressed up as a chorus. Now here's a counterpoint worth sitting with. Not all howling is strategic or territorial. Wolves also howl in what looks a lot like social bonding. Group howls often break out after a pack reunites, after a successful hunt, or even seemingly for no external reason at all, the way a family might burst into conversation after being apart. Some researchers have described these bouts as having an almost contagious celebratory quality, spreading from one wolf to the next until the whole pack is involved. It's a reminder that not every behavior in nature reduces neatly to a single survival function. Sometimes the howl is logistics. Sometimes it's a boundary marker. And sometimes it just seems to be what a reunited pack does. It's also worth separating wolf howls from the coyote choruses many people mistake for them at night. Coyote calls tend to be higher pitched, yippier, and more erratic. A different acoustic signature built for a different social structure, since coyotes often operate in smaller, looser groups than wolves. If you've heard something high and chaotic in the suburbs, that's almost certainly a coyote, not a wolf establishing territory. So back to that campfire, and that first rising note in the dark. It isn't a howl at the moon. It's a wolf using the physical properties of cool night air to make its voice travel as far as biologically possible. It's a pack checking that everyone is still where they should be. It's a warning to a rival pack 2 ridgelines over that this territory is taken, dressed up in overlapping harmonies designed to sound bigger than it is. And sometimes it's simply what happens when a family that spends its life spread out across miles of wilderness finds a way, for a few minutes each night, to sound like it's all in one place. The moon was never involved. The dark just happens to be when the world gets quiet enough and the air gets cold enough for a wolf's voice to finally travel as far as it needs to.